Hey, welcome in, and thank you for joining this first iteration of a deck building video that I've done. I'm excited to go through this with y'all and walk you through my thoughts on making decks and how I prepare for a game of Marvel Champions. So we'll go through a real life example now of my specific matchup that I'm looking to make for Ghost Spider in Protection versus Black Widow. So I've done like a few test games and whatnot and have my deck ready to go already. So I'll walk through kind of the process that I went through when making these. So we can start. To start out, we go to Marvel CDB, and typically what I do, I'll log in and have a username for myself here, and I will typically pick. So let's say, right, I know I want to play Ghost Spider, right? So I can come into the deck lists and we'll check out just the Ghost Spider decks. So right, that's every Ghost Spider deck. There's 54 pages of these, but I know I specifically want to do Protection, which knocks us down to 41 pages. So like most Ghost Spider decks that are in Marvel CDB are Protection, but I knew particularly I wanted to when I was thinking about what I wanted to use, I kind of wanted to use like a newer-ish card type of deal. So I think like typically I'll look at some things and then right now it sorts by popularity. I'll typically look at the number of likes things have and I will check out like, if I'm wanting to use maybe some newer cards. I'll see what the dates are for here, which will lead me to then going to sort it by date and seeing like, oh, what's the newest stuff that's coming out. And so I think when I was doing this, I'll look for like something like this. Oh, March 22nd, this deck just came out, has 6 likes. Events, Dear Gwen events. And so not much of a write up here, but I can look right away at this and think like, is this something that I want to play? And for me, when I look at something like this, I like that they lean into the spider web warrior type of kick here. I'm not a huge fan of like sidestep, but it's good to be defending and whatnot. But it didn't jump off the page to me as like what I was looking for. I think in particular, I was kind of hoping for a change of fortune deck. So if I come in here and look up Change of Fortune, I was like, that sounds fun. That's like, I haven't done that yet. I've barely ever played Ghost Spider, even though she's awesome, and I haven't really used Change of Fortune, so I searched for that, which people were way ahead of the game, where there's 3 pages of Ghost Spider decks, so we're still looking at the date that these all came out, and then, I don't know, I like flipping through, maybe seeing some popularity type of deals and trying to think some of the things I checked out. I might have Fortune Favors the Ghost. We can look at that one. So let's see, they had built this deck for heroic gameplay against Sinister Six, yada yada. When I looked in here, it was still not quite. I wanted a really defense heavy deck, so things like Powerful Punch, I know I don't play too often and whatnot. So there's, right, like I was just kind of getting some ideas. And so anyway, as I was looking at this, the deck that I landed on that I liked the kind of core of was this punching, kicking, and drawing, question mark. So when I come into here, first thing was this user had a great write-up and all kinds of cool stuff. I personally don't write up things as good as this with pictures included and whatnot, so that was cool to see. But looking at the cards, I was like, okay, they used Come Get Me Bub, which is a newer card. I'm wanting to use newer-ish cards like that. Riposte is a new card. Taunt's semi-new, right? Angel, things like that. So I was like, okay, and then the main thing, right? They had Change of Fortune, so I was like, this works with what I'm looking for. I want to incorporate something newer, and I want to do like a lot of defending in this turn. So essentially, the first iteration of this deck that I took and played, because I was like, I just want to play now, so let me just grab and go. The first thing I did do though was based on two things. So the only change I made initially was I took out Preservation, which is a resource that heals 1 damage from your hero. Don't really care about that, but I added in the side scheme that, oh gosh, I can't think. We'll look at the name for it, but the side scheme that lets you go grab that +1 defense upgrade, and on top of that, it comes in with 5 threat. And part of this, when he talked about, I think where was it? I think he talks about threat in this when he mentioned not today. I'm so excited. Perfect game. Punch and kicking. Tackling threat. Yeah, to tackle threat manage. Ghost Spider's main weakness. They have not today. And then, so I read this, while Phantom Flip is great for threat removal, or is great, 5 threat can be too much threat removal. And so I immediately was like, that's a perfect threat removal for 5 threat to go get your upgrade. So I made that change, and I looked at the comments, and this person commented on saying, does Preservation even work in this deck? And so I was just like, yeah, I'll take that out, throw that in. All to say, the deck, like, I got a win with it, but it's 45 cards, so kind of the next day, actually, the next day was earlier today as I was sitting at work, or maybe it was the day before. I was thinking, like, what kind of changes would I want to make to this deck? To answering the question mainly, my first thought was, well, if it's 45 cards, maybe I can go to 50 cards and add some more allies in. And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, I want to go to the opposite direction, because when I was playing this deck, the main thing that I was needing to do was either thwart using like Phantom Flip, because thwart goes nuts in that Black Widow scenario, and it has to say under 10, and then also the like Ghost Kick action. So I was like, I want more repetition of these events, so I would rather cut down the card size. So let's do this in action here. I can come in and copy punching, kicking, and drawing. And that's going to open up this in like an editable mode. So if I come in and edit, I can take a look at like, what do I really want? So I started with the allies. I clicked on allies and went to protection. And I was thinking Jocasta is awesome because she goes and grabs an event. And so I wanted like event heavy deals here. So typically I might come in and sort by the cost of these allies, because I like the cheaper ones. But the other main thing with this deck, I wanted the allies to do 2 things, which was like event driven and thwart. So Gambit is cool because he can go in and scry the deck for you, and then based on what you get, you might get some extra thwarting out of him. But he costs 3, so I was looking at the 2 cards, and one that popped out was Daredevil, which is a cost of 2, and he can thwart for 2 times. So I was like, that's not too bad, but that's all he does. At that point, Daredevil versus Gambit, I was still kind of leaning on Gambit. But, why not have more? We'll see. But I know that I have to cut down cards, so I guess I'll stick with the allies here. I don't think this was the first step that I did, now that I think about it, but if we go look at Gambit, I'm going to take him out, and the reason for being that was I wanted to put Brother Voodoo in, because Brother Voodoo goes and grabs those extra events that can come in handy for us, and he's going to be able to thwart two times, which is alright for me. Right, Gambit is good, but I also like when it comes to like checking out the encounter deck and making decisions based on those cards, it like can take me too much time, and we're already spending so much time in like the villain phase that I don't like thinking too far ahead about what cards are coming out, so I just sort of accept my fate. I'd rather do that. Whereas, like, right, Gambit makes total sense. You can still add him, because if you get him onto the table, you're going to be able to, and you like look ahead in the deck and you find a 3 then he's going to be able to thwart three times for you, right? But I don't really care. I'm like, it also runs the chance that you get a 0 or a 1 threat. And right, with Brother Voodoo, I'm like, I know what I'm getting. I know with the amount of events in this deck, I'm going to get an event. So he's, effective, like, instead of 4 cost himself plus 3 resources, he's going to be 3. And he thwarts for 2. And that was enough for me to throw in Brother Voodoo. But, right, that still puts us at 45 cards. One of the first things I thought of was, like, if we step back, the first thing I really probably went into was, like, what can I get rid of from this deck? And that immediately, for me, the first thing that jumped out was defensive energy and preservation. So we can, defensive energy is really nice with this deck because when you pay for a defense card, you just get a card back. So you're continuing to gain cards in your hand. But if we're trying to cut down to 40 cards, those to me were fine to go. And then the other ones that were fine to go was going to be Taunt. So Taunt's a cool card and gets you, it lets the villain attack you. But for my playthroughs, what I was finding was I wasn't really using Taunt too much. And it just, I don't know, wasn't worth it. It is a good card. There's definitely, you could argue that being in there and it'd be a great card. That's fine. But we're on the journey to 40 cards rather than the 45. And so I like these 2 allies. I really liked having the 2 come get me bubs. 3 would be overkill, I think. But having 2 of them, like, does help with getting more threat involved. And so with that, apologies, I had to sneeze. With the, what is it, come get me bubs, I liked having 2 of them in there because the healing, if you end up starting to take damage in this deck because too many allies are out or just like things can run away, the come get me bubs were nice. And speaking of like things getting away, knowing like this kind of deck, like a perfect defense deck, it's not like a lot of your actions are going to be during the villain phase. So like, a more standard deck build with aggression or any other pretty much aspect here is going to be like a better deck probably. Like you're going to be able to win easier. But there's something about the perfect defense with Spider-Gwen or with Ghost Spider that I really just wanted to take on. So we'll see. In my playthroughs, it was not easy. It was definitely a challenge, but all of your actions are pretty much happening during the villain phase. So the next thing I found was like threat removal is huge. So keeping the 3 not todays worked out fine. Preemptive Strike is a card that I just never really use, but it's that defense card. But I just don't use it. I really never use it. But one thing that I knew that I did, I knew I wanted events still, so I was like, what can I replace? So I went to protection events, and not to take it too long here, I ended up landing on Defiance to replace the Preemptive Strike. So if we look at the difference here, Defiance is when a boost card on an enemy attacking you would be turned face up, discarded instead. And the key part here is that it's a defense, and key part being you don't have to exhaust to defend with this card. So say Black Widow is going to attack, and I'm like, you know what, I'll just take her to attack. And it can either, ping off a tough or just deal 2 damage. Then say there's a minion. Now I can defend against the minion. And right when I played this card, I got to flip all my like response actions because I defended, so I'm doing stuff there. But then now, say a minion attacks me, and in my card draw from a perfect defense, I guess in this case, the tie would have to be from a tough, so you don't take any damage. Either way, say I don't take any damage, it pings off the tough, and I draw my cards. Now I get a riposte type of deal. My recording app on this laptop loves crashing, but we were talking about riposte, if I'm saying that right. yeah, say I draw that and I use that against like a minion that's attacking, I can deal with that. Then I can defend and ready, and then be readied for the next turn. Whereas if I defended and used like the Defiance, I only got to ready once. I don't know, all kinds of options there, but I just not a big fan of Preemptive Strike in this specific deck because Defiance worked for me. It is nice to get the little extra attack, but I find I've been running into a lot of moments with this one where I can get Black Widow down to, like if I'm playing on Expert, her second stage, I can get her down close, but I don't want to flip her into her next stage because when she gets revealed, she adds 3 threat to the main scheme, and it's just like ridiculous to deal with because just so much threat gets added on during this encounter. So all to say, all that happens. What else do I want to do here? So we're at 40 cards now. We have Brother Voodoo, Jocasta, above designs not today. So I have thwarting, I have attack in the ghost kick and the riposte. And that's going to pretty much be doing most of the attacking for us. And then as I'm looking through here, I think, oh yeah, I made a few more changes here. I think the changes that I made here were at 40 cards. When I also was looking through this, the Indomitables I didn't really use, so we can get rid of those. That it definitely would come in handy, and they are cool cards, but again, I was not wanting to add that because I definitely wanted to add an extra hard to ignore, so I can get more thwarting going. And so then we have one more card here, and I'm trying to think what I added with that last card. I think it may have just been 3 Defiances. And yeah, so I think this deck here is what I wanted to take out and use. And let me check one second. So I see what card I was missing. I had the 2 Defiances, but to go back to sort of the beginning of this video, I also had wanted to add side schemes, basic, the specialized training. And what we're grabbing with the specialized training is going to be the defense one, so you're you're defending for an extra defense, and then you're drawing a card. And so we know we're defending every turn, so that's the goal of this deck. So yeah, that ended up working out for me. One thing that I wouldn't mind in this deck, and that I would consider still, is probably maybe instead of Brother Voodoo, adding in Professor X, so you can get a Confuse and then the Professor X thwart. That wouldn't be too bad. But that's kind of, I think, was sort of my one qualm with this deck in the test phase of it, is that I want to be able to confuse, and right now nothing in here can confuse. So that is pretty brutal. So who knows? Like, I could potentially, one of those things would be either losing Flow Like Water and adding in a Professor X, which honestly I might do in hindsight after playing this. The Helicarrier I considered trashing as well, but it is, if you're able to get it down, it does end up just paying for those like one cost, where's the riposte in Not Today's, which is very nice. So that's not too bad. But yeah, so let's see. Let's think how I would feel about this, because I never, like, the Flow Like Water is really nice because you're playing all of these, but I feel like I just don't get it onto the table enough. So as good as it can be, let's see how we feel if we take out Flow Like Water, and then we add Ally. Let's add Professor X. Where's Professor X here? Oh, why am I not? Oh, he's up here. Jeez. I think in my head I was looking at the ends for Nick Fury even. So we're going to add Professor X here. the 3 allies, let's think. Yeah, I kind of like that, because at the end of the day, something that saved me in my previous game was I really needed some thwarting, and bringing out an ally, it was Brother Voodoo, ended up saving that. So I'm going to make this change to it live while we're here, and see how it goes, and I'll take this deck through the actual gameplay, and we'll see how I feel about that, because the Confuse from Professor X is huge. It's just like the biggest killer that I've been finding against Black Widow is just the threat is so dumb. Um, it's ridiculous. So dealing with that would be nice. And so Professor X could help with that. To do his thwart, he can maybe block against a annoying minion, because there's a ton of those with Black Widow. So let's do that. I might as well make a change while we're looking at it. And this is so fluid, you know. As you're going through it, like, it works for me. I like all these events. I like having, so let's go look at our makeup here. Like, we have 21 events. And what does that come do? Yeah, so that's right, like over half the deck here. We have 4, yeah, you know, about 50 whatever % of the deck is just events. So you're pretty much always going to be trying to have one of those. So you can play it, and then a quarter of it here is the upgrades. So if you're able to get enough upgrades down, you're thinning out the deck, so then you're just having even more chance to get all these events. So yeah, I like this. Professor X is going to come in huge, because the confusing can be killer. I'm finding times where either I'm just kind of forced to flip down to Alter Ego, or I really need to flip down to Alter Ego, and so that helps with this. So we're going to take this deck and then play it and see how we do, and I'll post the playthrough video probably on Friday. So hey, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll talk to you next time.